nation shifting back to Minneapolis this week as the trial of the former officer accused of killing George Floyd gets underway. Jury selection started this morning after it was delayed yesterday because of a dispute over the charges. Just one of the complications in the nearly year-long lead up to the trial of Derek Chauvin. Joining us now to talk about some of the legal ins and outs and strategy is San Diego criminal defense attorney David Shapiro. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, David, as you know, Chauvin is charged with second-degree unintentional murder and manslaughter, but the prosecution asked to reinstate a third-degree murder charge. Can you explain the reasoning behind that and why the defense objects?
Sure. I think the reasoning behind that is because the prosecution's concerned that they're not going to be able to get a conviction on second-degree murder for a number of reasons. And I think the prosecution would view getting a conviction of manslaughter, second-degree manslaughter, as a loss in many ways, socially, both inside and outside the courtroom. So by charging third-degree murder, I think what the prosecution is hoping is that the jury, if they're not going to convict Chauvin of second degree, will convict him of third degree and still subject him up to 25 years in prison.
And the defense doesn't want that third-degree charge?
The defense is not. I mean, I certainly would not if I was Chauvin's attorney, because they have a strong defense to second-degree murder. They may not have as strong a defense to the second-degree manslaughter, but again, the difference between a manslaughter charge in Minnesota and a murder charge, we're talking about at least a decade of custody time at play.
Yeah, and your answer made it clear. A lot of people, in fact, familiar with this case have said it's not a slam dunk for the prosecution. Can you talk about why?
Sure. I think without question, this is going to be a struggle for the prosecution, particularly as it relates to the second-degree murder charge, because of the fact that the jury will likely be able to consider many of what the defense attorneys will argue are superseding causes of Mr. Floyd's death. Things that Minnesota's own medical examiner said was a likely cause of death. Things like even COVID that Mr. Floyd had weeks prior. Things like fentanyl ingestion. It's believed he had fentanyl in his system. Things like a heart condition. We've even heard recently things come out that he had some sickle cells in his body. All of these things could have been superseding causes in addition to that terrible 9-minute video that we saw. And that could cast doubt on whether or not the prosecution's eliminated all and reasonable doubt as it relates to the second-degree murder charge.
You mentioned the jury. Jury selection in such a high-profile case is not simple. What are attorneys on both sides going to be looking for?
Sure. I mean, this case is as unique as it gets as far as jury selection, because you have a former cop that's sitting in the defense chair, and you have actually private attorneys prosecuting the case under the realm of the Attorney General's office. So if I'm a prosecutor in a case like this, I know they're looking for people that will not have a problem convicting a former cop. They do not want the law and order people on this jury as a prosecutor. They do not want the people who, would be looking at it and saying, yeah, but what about George Floyd? He was on drugs. They're probably not going to hear about Floyd's past criminal history. But, you want people that, as a prosecutor standpoint, that are going to be fixated on that video like so many of us are. Now, on the flip side of it, as a defense attorney, what I would be looking for and what I anticipate Chauvin's defense attorneys are looking for is you want people to look beyond that video. As terrible as that video was, you want to play up all of these superseding causes that could have very much led to Mr. Floyd's death. And your best defense might be, hey, we don't know what really caused his death. And was it one thing, as bad as that video is? We don't know. And if you don't know, you can't convict him of second-degree murder. And they're going to want jurors that are going to be able to look beyond those 8 minutes, those 9 minutes of just terrible video.
All right, we will see, of course, what happens. Attorney David Shapiro, thank you so much for lending us your expertise today.
My pleasure.